Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Mobalytics video. It's me, Vale, again as per usual, and today we're back with another updated tier list video for low elo. We're going to take a closer look at how those champions affected by patch 12.7 are performing, and as well as that, if there's any other changes to the tier list over the last week. Don't forget to head to our website by clicking the link in the description for our full low elo tier list, as well as our high elo one too. We also have all sorts of content for every single champion, including builds, runes, guides, combos, and plenty more, so don't miss out. So let's get started off with that top lane. In the god tier we've got Garen, Kayle, Yorick, Shen and Dr. Mundo. These champions have been having a fantastic season and are still performing excellently so far this patch. Gwen moves up to the B tier following her recent buffs, Yasuo moves up to the A tier to join his brother Yone, and Warwick falls down to the A tier after not backing up his bark as much this week. In patch 12.7 Lillia got some buffs to her passive and her W, and alongside a few other minor buffs recently, this has definitely impacted her win rate in that top lane. Not too many people play her in this role, but those that do are without a doubt having some great results. In patch 12.6 in the top lane, Lillia's win rate was already an impressive 51.7%, and now it's increased even further to 52.9%. Lillia is a fantastic abuser of low range and mobile top laners like Garen, and she can heavily punish them if she knows what she's doing. She definitely might not be as common in the top lane as she is in the jungle, but if you haven't tried it, maybe it's time that you should. Jayce has never been as good in low elo as he is at higher ranks, therefore he's not actually been included in our low elo tier list for quite some time. At the moment he's sitting off screen in the C tier and unfortunately will continue to do so after these recent nerfs hit him even harder. Jayce was already sitting at an unimpressive 47.5% win rate at lower ranks previously, which has now fallen down even further to 46.5%. Jayce is a very difficult champion and I'm sure those of you that can play him are still doing just fine. But for the most part he's just simply a much better champion at higher ranks. Gangplank has been absolutely broken in high elo since his buffs last week. This champion was already strong and these buffs really pushed him over the edge. Despite Gangplank building up a 10% ban rate in low elo, all of a sudden he's still had no positive changes to his win rate since these buffs in low elo and still sits at just under 48%. Gangplank is definitely a fantastic champion despite this low win rate at the moment though. So much like other hard to play champions like Lee Sin, if you can play him he's still appropriate in low elo. Gwen's buffs last patch have really helped her out. This champion has never had the best win rate at lower ranks, similar to a number of champions on this list already mentioned. But these recent buffs have helped at least make her viable. Gwen's late game will always be super strong, but she's just so weak in the early game at the moment, so if you're not amazing at farming and being super efficient, you're just not going to win. Gwen's win rate this patch jumped from a miserable 45.2% to a surprising 48%. We've added her to the B tier as a result of these improvements. Wukong's changes in the last patch were really encouraging and have definitely boosted his popularity by a significant amount. These changes haven't made Wukong broken in the top lane, but they've definitely made a difference. Wukong is a fantastic early game fighter and his skirmishing and teamfighting strengths don't go unnoticed either. Wukong's top lane win rate increased from 51% to 51.8%, which is not too shabby at all. I'm sure all of you Wukong mains out there are more than happy to have seen those buffs. Yasuo jumps up to the A tier 2 to join his brother after some decent impact from those buffs last week. Yasuo hasn't been quite as good as Yone in the top lane for some time now, but it does seem at lower ranks they are on a relatively similar level. Both of these bad boys got their ultimate cooldowns reduced. Yasuo's at earlier ranks and Yone's at later ranks. Honestly, it didn't really feel like these guys actually needed a buff, but Riot felt like after those lifesteal nerfs they needed a bit more love. Yasuo's win rate went from 49.4% to 50.2%, and Yone's from 49.9% to 50.25% as well. Some pretty positive impact for these guys for sure. So let's move on to the jungle now, and in the god tier we have Rammus, Nocturne, Volibear, Warwick and Trundle. Nunu moves down a tier after declining for the last few weeks, and Talon jumps up into the A tier after a real boost in his win rate. Rengar receives no real changes and despite being heavily contested still sits in the B tier in low elo as his win rate is fairly average considering just how popular he is. Lee Sin has always been a very difficult champion to play, and that's why he's historically always been suited to higher ranking players. He's been sat in our B tier for this tier list for a while now, and his win rate really isn't that impressive in low elo. The nerfs last patch hit him even harder, and he went from a 47.45% win rate to a 45.7% one. Despite this very unimpressive statistic, we're going to keep him in the B tier for now purely due to his super high popularity and the fact that if you can play him well, it still makes him viable. So we moved Karthus up to the B tier last week following these buffs, and we're happy to say that this is a good spot for him after reviewing his performance over the last week. Karthus jungle is not easy, and in low elo it's never been as good as it is in those higher ranks. This definitely feels like a bit of a theme going on for these champions spoken about so far. Karthus' win rate jumped up from 47.8% to 48.9% though with these changes, which definitely helped him out. Karthus' hardcore farming and press R playstyle does sound easy, but it's actually not that great if you have so little impact that your team just capitulates in the process. Karthus is definitely a great pick if you do know how to play him properly though. Much like the top lane, Lillia got a huge boost from the buffs last week, and her win rate in the jungle has also got a really good rise too. She went from 49.9% to 51.4%, which shows a clear improvement in both of these roles. Lillia's movement and mobility makes her pretty hard to deal with, and if you get the hang of her unique playstyle, she's a fantastic pick to go for in this patch. Last week, we predicted that Wukong would be the dark horse of this patch in the jungle, and it was a pretty ballsy call to put him in the S tier, but he's definitely shown his faith in us and repaid us with some seriously impressive results. Wukong's win rate went from 49.2% to 52.2%, showing a huge increase following on from patch 12.7. The buffs he received just screamed to be abused in the jungle, and not only did they improve his E damage to monsters and lower his Q cooldown, but they also gave that clone the ability to jump over walls. This change is awesome, and it makes him super hard to predict now and makes his ganks so damn punishing. Wukong is kinda similar to a Shaco now in his ability to bypass wards with that stealth. Wukong is very heavily contested in low elo at the moment, but rightly so, as those stats don't lie. On to the mid lane now, and in the god tier we have Diana, Anivia, Veigar, Neeko and Ahri. Pyke moves up to the S tier after some crazy success over recent weeks. He is getting nerfed next patch though, so let's see if he actually stays there. After Ryze's nerfs, he has the lowest win rate out of any mid laner in the game at the moment, sitting at a pretty saddening 42.5%. Ryze just keeps getting nerfs due to his success in pro play, and now he's basically just a custom minion in the mid lane. No offense to custom minions, obviously. Neeko's buffs continue to add to her recent success at all ranks at the moment, and she's had a solid 52 to 53% win rate for quite a few weeks. Neeko just has so many positives right now, and if she keeps getting buffed, she's obviously only going to get better. Neeko has those cheeky jukes and baits to outplay her enemies alongside that catch potential and devastating AoE teamfighting ultimate. If you main mid lane this season and you haven't played Neeko yet, now is the best time to give her a go. Last week, Pantheon also received some changes, and a lot of people were skeptical about whether or not these were actually nerfs despite attempting to be positive adjustments. Well, it seems like they definitely were buffs overall, as his win rate has jumped from an already impressive 52.5% to 53.3%. Pantheon in that mid lane has been a very underrated pick for the last few patches, and although he may be a little bit one-dimensional in his early game snowbally playstyle, there's no denying just what this champion is capable of. Pantheon's crazy damage in the lane phase, his all-in kill threat and his roaming potential with his ultimate make him a bit of a demon at lower ranks, and players just do not expect the sheer amounts of burst that this champion can do. Last week we bumped him up into that S tier, and we will definitely keep him in that position with this current success. Back to the terrible twins now, Yasuo and Yone, and both also saw positive changes in the mid lane too. Yasuo jumps up with an impressive boost from 50.3% to 51.6% win rate, and Yone not so significant but still positive with a 50.1% to 50.5% increase overall. Both of these champions are more than capable in both of the solo lanes, but the general feeling is Yone is better in the top lane and Yasuo is more suited to that mid lane at the moment. Obviously this is all dependent on matchups, but you get the point. Let's move on to that bottom lane now and see how 12.7 has made its impact here. In the god tier we have Jhin, Veigar, Vayne, Misfortune and Samira. MF and Samira have been creeping up that tier list for a while now and are performing super well in low elo and our higher ranks too. Both of these champions are huge snowballing machines that can really carry games when they get ahead early game. This is probably part of the reason as to why they are winning so many games. Yasuo moves up to the S tier in the AD carry position following his recent buffs, as he was already performing super well in this role. Gale Force got nerfed last patch, but it doesn't seem to have made too much of a difference to those champions that rely on it like Jhin for an example, as he's still an absolute monster in that bot lane. Zeri mains, you might want to skip this part of the video as it might make you a little bit too sad. Zeri is going to fall out of the B tier and into the C tier with currently the lowest win rate out of any AD carry in the game right now. These further nerfs last patch were aimed at pro play and they've made her win rate fall even further from a 48.2% win rate in patch 12.6 to a somewhat devastating 43.8%. Zeri now joins Aphelios and Ryze in the mere selection of champions who are just impossible to balance as they're so damn good in pro play. I'm not too sure what Riot's long-term plan is with these champions, but they do seem a little bit impossible to balance. Kalista finally received a few buffs last week, and it's really encouraging to see that Riot haven't forgotten about this incredibly uniquely designed champion. Kalista takes a ton of practice, and she's never been quite as popular in low elo, but these buffs did make a little bit of a difference. Kalista's win rate last patch was 48.4%, and now it's 49.6%. Hopefully with a bit more love, Kalista will make the grand return that she truly deserves. For now though, she's going to have to continue sitting in the B tier for the time being. Finally, let's take a quick look at support. In the god tier we have Sona, Soraka, Nami, Blitzcrank and Zyra. Lux moves down into the A tier from the S tier, and aside from that we actually have no other movements at all. Support really hasn't been majorly impacted in any patch recently. However, this patch they did make a small nerf to Moonstone Renewer and a small buff to Umbral Glaive. Sona, Soraka and Janna are the main champions you think about when it comes to the mythic item Moonstone Renewer, which did receive some nerfs this patch. Despite this though, these guys are still performing ridiculously well, and it hasn't even scratched the surface at all, making no difference to their win rates over the last week. These champions are just so damn strong in low elo, and any scaling, sustaining, peeling powerhouses will continue to dominate the enchanter support meta for the foreseeable future. Soraka is getting a nerf next patch though, so let's see if that actually makes any difference. As we mentioned, Umbral Glaive was buffed in patch 12.7. It's 100 gold cheaper now, and the item's effect is usable more often, which in my eyes is a pretty good change. Pyke and Senna are the main two champions that come to mind when I think about this item, and they both have seen slight increases over the last week, but nothing to blow your socks off. Both of these champions are having a pretty swell season to say the least though, so if you haven't tried this item since the changes, I'd definitely recommend giving it a go. It's a very good value for money item that grants you a good boost to your damage alongside some pretty juicy vision control. Well, that's going to conclude all of our tier list updates for this week and all of the stat changes and champion performances that have been affected by patch 12.7 in all of its glory. We hope you enjoyed this new type of tier list video update, and let us know if there's anything else you'd like us to include in these videos to improve them further. Before you go, don't forget to click the link in our description to head to our website and check out the full tier list for yourself. As always guys, thanks for watching and we'll see you in the next video. Take care.